Ian Woodcock. Nice to meet you, mate. I've not
you
seen
very
you
much.
for a long time.
It's been about 5 years, I think.
Well, it's been a bit longer than that since we last met. It's 2015. I
You're
worked it
joking.
out. No. So Ben, who I'm also doing this No Brains podcast, as it's called, he's got a question for you, which is when you met me, when I met you at Woodside Park Tube Station, and in my book I recount how I was looking for a punk, and I see some, and I can't see any punks. All I can see is what looks like a bank clerk in a leather coat holding a bass. So I thought that must be you, and I was unsure about whether to go ahead or not, or run away. What did you think when you met me coming towards you? Was I on my own?
You were on your own. You remember we met at the tube station, and I'd come from Acton, from Acton town. So I'd come right across London on the tube. It's quite a significant journey, maybe an hour and a quarter, hour and a half, something like that on the tube. I think we were meeting at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I got there normally like half an hour early. So I'm waiting there. You, of course, were typically late. So, I see this guy coming down the hill. There was a slope down towards the station, right? It was on a T-junction, as I recall. And I can see this guy coming down, and you definitely looked like a punk, because you had an earring. You had like a hanging earring.
Yeah.
Not spiky hair, but it wasn't like, kids
Dyed,
had long hair in those days.
Right.
And it was short and cropped, I would say. Not like like a skinner, but it was short hair. And I think you might have had a floppy handkerchief in your pocket. And I thought, that must be him. And you came down, and I could see you, and you turned around and went to a phone box. So I thought, fuck me, I've been here an hour.
I got back in the phone box. See, what I was doing, I got back. I'd seen you then,
right.
And I got back in the phone box and phoned Brian, and said that I can't see any punks, but there's this guy. He's got a bass, so it must be him. And so that's what I was up to then.
Well, I thought, I'm not going to come all this way, and if that's the guy, let him go. So I went, straight to the phone box, and you sort of reluctantly opened it, and I said, "Are you Andy?" Yeah, that's it. And here we are today.
And how did that meeting go? I forget.
Well, we went to your mum's house, and you played me some songs on a guitar. You played me a recording. I think Brian turned up later.
Yeah.
And there was another guy there as well. A guy, I can't remember his name now, but there was another guy there as well.
All right.
And we were there for 2 or 3 hours talking about stuff. So let's say this is like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then you said we're having rehearsals in Acton on Saturday. Remember we used to rehearse in Acton?
Well, that was weird that we rehearsed in Acton.
Well, it was great for me, because
Yeah.
I could literally walk there from where I lived.
And I don't know why we chose Acton, because it was miles away from Finchley.
Tracks, it was called Tracks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In Churchfield Road.
And it's it's almost as if we were wanting a bass player from Acton.
Well, your wish was granted.
So what did you think of what did I play you?
I have no idea what you played me, but
So, I don't think we had any recordings, so I would have
you did play something on like a cassette player. You had something. This was a demo that we did. I mean, that was definitely a demo done in your bedroom with a Chad Valley microphone or something like that.
No doubt, yes.
And it was just really, I think, the feeling. We were talking about what bands we liked. My sort of musical background is I really like stuff like Chuck Berry. I'm still listening to Chuck Berry today. Why is that? Because my parents listened to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and then you find out who influenced them. And I was at that time just listening to the New York Dolls. I had the Ramones album. Both of us had the import Ramones album. So if you've got the Ramones album in the UK, it didn't have all the words on it. You had to get the American import. And I remember you played a Ramones track, and we were talking about the words, and we both knew the words from that. And I think that probably helped me.
Definitely.
Because stuff like the Velvet Underground, even David Bowie at that time, I wasn't keen on.
Right. Yeah, I remember flicking through your record collection.
I remember that day, like that look of shock on your face.
Ted Nugent.
Yeah, that's right.
Stuff like that, and but I think the fact you had the Ramones album said a lot, because not many people had that at the time, and so that was good.
I mean, that was for me. That was there were two things that really sort of guided me towards the punk thing. Firstly was that Ramones album, because I'd never heard music like that, played like that, and secondly was when we listened to the Dave Goodman Pistols demos.
Yeah.
Because they were like years ahead of everyone. Even, that wasn't a good recording. I don't think Dave had done a great production job.
No, but, but it captured them, didn't it?
But it was so different, and it was so powerful. That was it. Really.
So you like the Pistols?
Oh yeah, I like the Pistols a lot. I thought they were, tremendous. I like the Damned. I like the Clash. I really like Gen X. Mm-hmm. Who else? A lot of other stuff around that time.
I spoke to Durwood the other day, and he said that he spoke to you a bit, but he said that his first love of music was Chuck Berry and rock and roll. And
is that right?
And that kind of thing as well, yeah.
All right. I got Durwood's most recent album, and it's very, very bluesy. I mean, very, very bluesy.
Yeah.
With slide guitar.
He likes his slide.
Yeah.
But he's a good songwriter, Durwood. I mean, I'd not met him properly, apart from just saying hello to him with Gen X and stuff, but we met on Instagram a couple of years ago, and then somehow we just started writing stuff together, and some of the best stuff I've done definitely has been with Durwood. I love his guitar playing, it's very...
Well, the last band I was in was in Empire with
that's right.
Durwood and Mark. Well, Mark Laff, yeah. I mean, I talk to Mark, I wouldn't say frequently, but we talk now and again, because Mark's living in France now.
That's right, yeah.
I'm always threatening to pop in and see him now and again, but not got round to it yet.
Yeah, he was a great drummer. He lived in Finchley.
He did. Well, we used to see him at the pub, didn't we? We used to go to a pub on the High Street, the name of which I can't remember. The Torrington. So we used to go to the Torrington. Mark was a regular in there, and that was a very good connection. I remember, I think our second gig was supporting them.
That's right.
The LSE.
That was their first gig as well, as it turns out.
Was it?
Yeah, as Generation X.
How the hell did they headline over us? Well, you think about the bands that we headlined over.
Yeah, at that point, if that was only
Sham
a second
69.
gig, that was only a second gig, and the Buzzcocks gig.
Buzzcocks, Cockney Rejects.
But we hadn't done more than a couple of gigs then, so, and there was already a buzz about them, because Chelsea, the band that they had before, had a bit of a name by then, and so but that was their first gig.
But they were good guys. I liked all of those guys. Tony James was a nice guy. Mark's a great guy. Billy Idol, I mean, he's done tremendously well.
He's done tremendously well, yeah. Definitely. I think out of all of them, Durwood had the problem with Tony rather than Billy, which I would have expected the singer to be more of a problem in a band.
It's personalities, isn't it?
Yeah.
And everyone's young.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. Durwood was only 17. Tony was like 7 years older than him, which is a lot. I mean, I thought you were really old, and you were 2 years older than me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you compare us. I was thinking the other day, Brian James, who I thought was probably the best of any guitar player around at that time, really super talented. He was 10 years older than us.
Yeah.
10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So, if you think a 27-year-old man at that time, he's got life experiences. A 27-year-old man can be married with a couple of kids. So that means he's had, relationships, he's lived some life, he's travelled overseas. And we're trying to compete with people like that.
Yeah, I know.
And it's difficult.
But I wouldn't have tried competing with people like that unless we'd been thrown into that situation. It never would have occurred to me to try to compete with.
But when people are looking at us, that's, we're supporting the Damned, we're being compared to the Damned, aren't we? Well, they're not as good as the Damned. Well, of course we're not as good as the Damned. We're nowhere near as musically accomplished as them or spiritually. But I think if you look at, well, certainly your lyrics and things like that, very, very contemporary today.
Yeah, actually, I'm surprised that the lyrics hold up, because you usually expect to feel quite embarrassed about early attempts at writing, but some of them are not bad at all. There are a couple that didn't make the set live. Do you remember a song called Reflections?
No.
That was one of the first songs that we...
I don't remember that. I don't think I ever played that one.
That was terrible.
Yeah?
You did play it, but I think we scrapped that very early on, because it was in one of the first sets we did, in fact, the Hope and Anchor sort of set list. But I remember Outside View. I just want to show you this, right? This is when at the rehearsal studio.
Yeah.
I showed you Outside View. I didn't know how to start it because it was going to just start with that riff going da na 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 na.
Yeah.
But then I thought maybe just have
Yeah.
and then go into da na na na, and then you did that. So there's that da 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 da. But you added this nice. Play it for.
Well, I can't play it because I don't remember how it goes.
Have a go. Go on.
I can't even see the strings now. Yeah.
Go on. Play it properly. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
There you go.
I'll just do it again. I've learnt it better than you.
Okay. I didn't realise I haven't played a guitar like that for years and years and years. I haven't played in any bands.
Why is that? Did you go off music?
No, not at all. I mean, I listen to more music now than I probably did when I was younger because it's like a constant. But I feel that to play, I mean, I couldn't play like I played back in those days. I was far more competent. It would be awful for me to play in front of people, not be as good, and be, oh well, he wasn't as good. Maybe it was all trickery on the records and things like that. That's the reason. I have no desire to play live again.
You were offered once, weren't you, to do a gig for the people you worked for when you were living in the Far East.
Yeah.
You told me that that you didn't even admit that you were a bass player, and that they found out and persuaded you.
I had a lot of that was sort of government pressure. So there was a band. I mean, I'm going back now 20 years ago. There was a band of CEOs of Korean corporations, of which I was one, and we played at things like the G7 and stuff like that. But only three or four songs. I think it was a Beatles song, a Beach Boys song, a local Korean song, and I don't know, some Carpenters song, something like that. You know, it was really shit. Although the guys who played in the band, one of them, he'd been like 3 number ones in the Korean hit parade in the 1980s, which probably wasn't significant in terms of sales numbers, but he was the guy who was mobbed by the Birds.
Right. And that was the last gig you played?
That was the last time I played, yeah.
What year was that?
2007 maybe.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened then? Because after you left Eater, what happened after we split?
Well, I left Eater. I worked a little bit with Gary Stedman. Gary and I sort of
Gary was the guitarist that replaced Brian in Eater.
Went on to, where did you play for? Flock of Seagulls and Classic Nouveau. Yeah. I'm a very, very good guitar player, very accomplished guy. That clearly nothing going to happen. I had, during my Eater days, been approached by the Vibrators to join them. It was just at the time that we'd launched our album. You know, we were going off on that tour around the country. Mm-hmm. And so I turned that down, and then they came back, and I joined the Vibrators and had a couple of years with them. That sort of all faded. 3 of us, so myself, Eddie, the drummer, and Phil Ram, who was the guitar player, we went off and formed a band called The Shots. Almost got a deal with Bronze Records in Camden Town. Had a show, I forget what they call them now. You know, you put on a big show for all the music execs to come along to, like a showcase at the Victoria Palace, and Phil Ram went missing. He obviously, I don't know what happened, but Phil went missing. So that was the end of that. Then I got a call from Mark saying, you know, we're looking for a bass player in Empire, and we did, I don't know how many, but mainly London dates with Empire, and then that all fizzled out, and I decided that's it. I think, you know, for me, I didn't really want to leave the music business, but the music business had left
Yeah.
Me, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, constantly starting. You have to have a lot of belief in yourself.
Mm.
You have to have a lot of ambition in yourself, and you have to have a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just to keep going in the music business. I mean, I greatly admire what you have done. Still doing gigs after all these years, still getting people coming to see your shows.
Well, I think it's determination.
That's exactly the word I'm looking for.
You know, and it's, for me, it's more born out of I can't do anything else. But it's not easy. Life of a band is always very short.
Yeah, it's fickle.
Yeah, I mean the current lineup has been together 4 times as long as we were.
Wow,
which is
that's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
But and then so after you got out of music, what happened? What did
I do? Well, I, you know, like everyone, I got a sort of temporary job. That led to a permanent job, and then I started to get a little bit more commercially savvy. I went to work for Mars, you know, the chocolate company.
Yeah.
Spent 5 years there, and then I got into the sports business, working for a British company called High Tech. Worked my way up to director level there over 12 years. Then I joined, very briefly, a guy called Mark Goldberg, who owned Crystal Palace Football Club. At the time, worked there for about 9 months.
Doing what?
I was head of one of his external divisions, but I was involved latterly in the Crystal Palace business, which was, I mean, it was shambolic beyond belief, but it was very, very interesting. From a business learning perspective, very, very interesting. And then I got a call from Puma, who had asked me to join a year previously when I was still at High Tech. Are you still looking? Are you still interested? And I said, yeah, okay, I'll come back, have a chat. And then I spent the next 12 years in Asia. So all in all, I spent 25 years in Asia.
Whereabouts in Asia?
I started off in South Korea, and then I went to Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, back to Hong Kong, back to Korea, and back to Malaysia finally. But my daughter, my eldest daughter, is still living in Hong Kong.
How did you find that switch from UK to Far East?
It was, we're going to Korea, you know, Korea's a very Confucian society. So, you know, men in those days, we're talking about 1990 now, men very much decide what happened, and women follow along with what the men wanted to do. And it was big, heavy drinking society. And I'd gone from a sales role to a production role, which was new to me. So it was all very new and very exciting. Less so new and exciting for my new wife, because I'd been offered the job and decided to ask my girlfriend of 9 years to marry me, because I'm asking now her to sell her business, give up everything, move to the other side of the world, away from her family, which she's very close to. And, you know, so it was a big thing, probably a bigger thing for her than me, because for me it was just like a working thing, and it's a progression in what you're doing.
Right.
But it was great, you know, we spent a couple of years there, and then we moved to Taiwan. By that time our second daughter's born, and then we moved to Hong Kong, which was always my dream place to go and work and live. Finally down to Malaysia, which I then discovered is my favourite part of Asia. And then it all started again with Puma, same sort of round the merry-go-round of different countries and looking after different regions and stuff like that.
Right. And then Puma folded, didn't they?
No, Puma's now clearly number 3 brand in the... I mean, I joined Puma in 2000. It was 99 I actually joined. And it was a $300 million business, and today I think it's a €5 billion business. So it just went...
But there was something that happened when you left Puma, wasn't there? Something to do with shares?
Well, some people got shares, some people didn't get shares.
Right, but that wasn't that a pivotal thing? I remember.
Well, it was important for me because I got shares.
Right, but wasn't that quite a life-changing thing?
I wouldn't say life-changing, but it helped.
It helped.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Being a bit coy about this. So what sort of bands did you during the punk thing? Who did you like and who did you dislike out of those bands? What do you think went wrong as well at the end of it all?
Well, that's a difficult one. I think, in terms of, I have to talk about really the pre-punk stuff. So I had gone to see bands like the 101'ers. I had seen a lot of Stranglers gigs. You know, there was a big R&B scene in London. So you had the Count Bishops, Dr. Feelgood, Eddie and the Hot Rods, I thought absolutely tremendous. Mike Spencer and the Cannibals. These are all bands that were driving, and suddenly other bands like the 101'ers started to come along and then change into, you know, Joe Strummer.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a great Joe Strummer story. So I didn't know Joe very well, but I used to at the weekend work in a music shop in Chiswick High Street. One day Joe and his bass player came in, and you know,
Paul Simonton.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Not Paul Simonton.
Oh,
no,
right.
This is the 101'ers.
Oh, right.
So he came in. He was a sort of
bald
balding
guy with the glasses. Yeah, I remember him.
And you know, people come into the shop and they immediately split up. Right, they're coming in to nick stuff.
Right.
Because people come into a shop, they're looking at things together, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, if you go shopping, you don't suddenly go to the other side. And I knew who he was. I didn't know who the bass player was. And I went up to Joe and said, look, I know who you are. You're in the 101'ers, aren't you? He goes, oh yeah, okay. I said, and I know you're coming in to nick stuff. And if you do, he's going to get it. And they both left. And that's the only time I spoke to Joe Strummer.
No argument or anything.
No, they're just because they're in there to nick, aren't they? You know, if somebody tells you you can have a go at them.
Didn't you ever mention that? I wish you told me that. I would have mentioned it to him.
Well, I never had the opportunity to talk to him afterwards. I mean, I knew if I saw him nick quite well. You know, like if we saw each other, we'd talk. The other guys I didn't know at all.
Right, because you were quite regarded by the older people as a good bass player. I think that's what surprised a lot of people about Ita, was that we had this really good bassist, and a lot of people now sort of cite you as one of the best punk bass players of the time. So, well,
all they need to do is need to go out and buy a book which is called Strolling Bass. So everything on our records comes from that book, Strolling Bass.
The bass player that I'm working with now, Max Batista, he tries to get as close to your sound as possible. Okay. It's very trebly and kind of that elastic band sound that has been described. Twang. So how did you achieve this sound?
Well, two things really. Firstly, I had an Ampeg V4 amp, which is a guitar amp. This is what, you know, Mick Jones from The Clash also used the same amp. And what's unique about that amp, it had middle on it. Most amps, you've got bass and treble, but this had middle. And I used to clank the middle right up. And that gave us a more sort of rounded sound, not flat, like flat round strings would make, but a more rounded sound. And then when we recorded, I used to use a Fender Champ. I had a Fender Champ amp and another one going straight into the mixer, so that
again, both.
Presumably Dave would have brought the bass up, but you got that clickiness.
Yeah.
And the reason that I did that was I was looking for the same sound as John Entwistle. You know, John Entwistle used to use Sun amps, which were no longer available.
Right.
And the guitar that I've got, that old Precision, used to belong to him.
Ah, right. How did you end up with that?
Myself, my friend Gary and I, we used to go to a guy in Hanwell who was Pete Townsend's guitar customizer, and he had that guitar in there.
What'd you pay for it?
$275.
Fucking hell, that's a lot of money.
It was all the money I had.
Right.
It was a lot of money, but you know, it's a 1968 Precision.
And is that what you used? Is that the bass that you used with us? Because didn't you have an SG to begin with?
Yeah, the first single I used it was a Columbus short scale SG.
Yeah.
Which I then cut away, put in new pickups, burnt the paint. I literally burnt the paint off.
I remember you dropping it.
No, I threw it. Our first gig
right.
at Finchley School.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I really like that.
That you know, when I look back, how you arranged that.
We'll talk about the school in just 1 minute. The gig at my school.
Yeah.
What are your recollections of how that went down?
Well, I have to say, I thought there was going to be like half a dozen people there, probably mainly family members.
So did I.
You know, we were there quite early because we had to be there all day, didn't we?
Yeah,
setting up. And
that's right. What time? Do you remember what time we got there? It was just after school, probably, wasn't it?
No, was it a Friday night or a Saturday night?
Friday.
We were there in the afternoon. I remember being, sort of maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Must have been after school because I hadn't told anybody we
Right.
were doing it, and so obviously we would have waited till staff all left.
Yeah.
So yeah, come pick up from there.
So we turn up, empty hall. What was like an assembly hall, really, wasn't it?
Mm.
And then suddenly, all the other bands start to turn up. And of course, they really don't know what's going on any more than we do, although you probably did. And then everything's set up. I mean, the setup was reasonably quick. I remember we did a sound check.
Yeah.
We went off. I don't know where. We seemed to be sort of milling around in the crowd because there were no dressing rooms or anything
That's
like
right.
that.
That's right.
And then suddenly all these kids started coming in.
Yeah.
And I think also that was the start of the Finchley Boys. There was a group of fans particularly interested in the Stranglers called the Finchley Boys, and they sing about them in one of their songs.
Right,
I can't remember which one. And that was really the start of the Finchley Boys because until then, that group never really existed.
No, well, I never knew any of the Finchley Boys. I was from Finchley. I thought we were the only Finchley Boys. No, I never understood that Stranglers connection. But the PA was organised by the Damned. I remember that. So the Damned did quite a lot of preparation for it. They just didn't know that we weren't allowed to be there.
I mean, the amazing thing, of course, the Damned basically only played at the Hope and Anchor. If you think about gigs at that time.
Yeah, there weren't many gigs to have.
No, the Pistols and the Clash, they seem to have access to venues nobody else did.
Yeah.
And a lot of pubs were sort of reticent.
They hired places though.
Yeah? Oh, okay.
They hired that strip club in Soho, which they did a lot of gigs at.
But they've got the experience of doing that. They've got a manager who proactively is helping them. Who did our gigs? We had to do all our gigs ourselves.
Yeah, I know. It was always just on the fly as well, really. How did you feel we went down at that
I
gig?
think okay, I would say okay. It was our first gig. I think we were very excited at the end of it because people clapped.
Yeah.
That's probably why I threw my bass up in the air, And that was first time I'd been on stage and played in front of people and we'd remembered most of the songs in the right order.
It was amazing, I thought, because the only gig I'd done before then was in Manchester.
Yeah.
With the Buzzcocks supporting us.
Yeah.
And it was a shambles. It was complete. And I thought, if this is what it's like, I don't ever want to do this again because it was just embarrassing and excruciating. It was horrible, and it nearly turned into a riot. And it just turned into like a slanging match between me and the rest of this crowd that had come to see the Buzzcocks, not us. They weren't fucking interested. And I thought, this is what it's going to be like. I'm not so sure. And we got Dee in the band. It was a different thing altogether, and it was great.
I think it was a good gig, and then pretty soon afterwards we did that gig with Gen X, which I also thought, we did reasonably well there. That was a much older crowd, as I remember, university students maybe in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And we're still up there very much as kids.
That went quite smoothly, didn't it?
Yeah.
I was quite surprised at that. Did you come to the pub with us after the gig at Finchley Manor Hill?
Probably.
Do you remember that, going into the pub with the Damned and there's all the locals, there was a Teddy Boys sort of pub.
Oh, you're right. No, I don't remember that so well.
That was good. And me and Brian had to hide because we weren't allowed to be in there getting beer and people had to bring...
There are lots of venues we played where we couldn't get a beer. We were up there getting paid to play. I seem to remember going to Lancaster once, playing a club in Lancaster, and the guy wouldn't serve us a beer.
Yeah, and the 100 Club wouldn't let us play at all, would they, because of our age?
Yeah.
So, but some of the gigs up north with when Brian and Dee was still in the band. Oh, actually no, Phil. There's one with Phil in particular. I'm thinking of where they wouldn't stop giving us drinks, and everyone got fucking so rat faced.
That was Halifax, wasn't it? Halifax. I remember playing there.
But I remember me and Brian taking our clothes off in the van on the way back for some unknown reason.
That was the old comma walkthrough van that we had. That was a good van, that was. Because we had plenty of seating. I think we had seating for 8.
It wasn't bad, was it?
Yeah, all the gear behind us.
You could sleep in it.
You could sleep in it. And it didn't go very fast. It only went about 50 miles an hour.
It took a long time.
But yeah.
To get, cause I think it got hired out quite a lot to other bands. The Banshees started using it. And
yeah, it was the label's van, wasn't it? We paid for it, but they owned it. Like a lot of the stuff that Caruso did.
What did you think of Caruso? Caruso was our manager who, bit of a spiff, wasn't he?
I think he was a lot of a spiff. I think we certainly got fleeced on the Japanese money because Polydor paid a lot of money to get our publishing rights.
We didn't even know this. Caruso, without our knowing, had signed a deal with Polydor Publishing in Japan, signed our names, and taken an advance and told us fuck all about it. And it was quite 50 grand or something like that.
That would have kept him going for quite a while.
But kept us going for
this
quite a while.
This is normal music business procedure. What I felt about Caruso was he didn't manage us. So one of the things, I look back on now, what should we have done? Probably we shouldn't have got rid of D. I think, in terms of, as a visual asset, very, very strong. Why did we get rid of him? Because he became very unreliable. He didn't turn up. Well, we should have just said, we'll get a session musician in. We could have asked Phil, great drummer, Phil, you come and deal with the drums, because there's no doubt in my mind
that would have been a
D would have
better plan.
Been able to play it. He wasn't a by any means a terrible drummer.
No, especially not for a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah,
he's better than the guy at Flintlock.
That was a show. I hated that show. I absolutely hated that. That was in Sheffield, wasn't it? The top rank at Sheffield. Was it called Fab 208?
Fab 208, yeah.
With Peter Powell.
I liked the audience. They were going pretty crazy.
Well, they
screaming
were.
13-year-old girls.
Yeah, but it just to me, I thought, no, that's not for me.
Joke. But that sacking of D, I wasn't really on board with that. I went along with it, but I kind of knew that I didn't want to do it, and he was like my mate then as well.
Yeah.
And but I felt a bit railroaded into it, and I felt I was the one that had to phone him. I remember we were at Dingwalls, and I had to go and make the phone call from the phone box there, and that was rather unpleasant. But I think that was a mistake as well, because I was as good a drummer as Phil definitely was. D was like a integral part of the band, and it was getting rid of a big asset, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think what Caruso should have done, he should have explained to us, as a manager, listen, he's a bit of a liability at the moment, but we can manage that liability by using session musicians in recordings or not putting him under too much pressure. I mean, the guy must have been under tremendous pressure.
Yeah.
Because he was always being asked to go off and do Jackie shoots and loads of other stuff.
But he was also starting to take quite a lot of drugs at that time as well, which didn't help, and that became a bit too important to him, and it was becoming impossible to arrange rehearsals and stuff like that.
We're all getting down there, and we've got to get the drummer in. Who was that reggae band?
Tribesman,
drummer in from the Tribesman to.
But with session musicians, I remember once Dave asking us if we would have a session player play Brian's parts because his guitar playing was a bit basic, and I was dead against doing that. But in hindsight, it might not have been such a bad idea.
Well, everybody else was doing it.
Yeah, it's true.
A lot of talk of Chris Thomas production and getting somebody in to play Steve Jones.
Yeah, and also I spoke to
true.
Richard Jobson from the Skids the other day, and Stuart Adamson, great guitarist, didn't even play guitar on Into the Valley, the big hit, because he walked out and had an argument, so they got the engineer to do it instead. And but it's funny enough, I thought that was cheating, having a session player play for us. I just thought that's not on. That's just cheating. I didn't mind cheating in every aspect, other aspect, but
I think it's just our naivety. Everything is new for us. We have no experience of this, and somebody like Caruso or Dave Goodman, who've been in that business for more than a decade, a lot longer than a decade, they should have said, this is what you need to do. I mean, I don't know if you remember Rob Hallett.
Yeah.
He's apparently done very well in...
He still works as an agent or booking agent.
Yeah, but like a mega level.
A big one, yeah.
I think in hindsight we probably should have gone with Rob because he wasn't in Caruso's...
We should definitely have gone with Rob.
...empire.
But Caruso, our label boss, he didn't like other people giving us good advice,
yeah.
you know, and so he also he got rid of Lee Childers, who the Heartbreakers manager, who took over for a while and did a lot for us. And he gave some really good advice, like he told us that you're recording too many songs for the label, don't only give them what you need. And but Cruiser didn't like any of that.
No, he didn't like being questioned.
No, and so I think that was probably a big downfall for us because could have achieved a lot quicker if we'd had good people on board. But I mean, the label, I think they were just learning the ropes the same as we were.
Yeah, I mean, certainly his experience of running a record label were minimal because this was his first venture. But he wasn't managing us. He was sort of stopping us doing things rather than saying, right, this is my strategy for building you up, presenting you as a band to the world. And we got to take these tactical steps, like we'll use a session player for this. Brian, if you can't play this guitar solo, because I don't know if you remember when we went and recorded with Martin, I can't remember his surname.
Like Jewel, was it Jowl?
No, it wasn't Martin Jowl, it was Martin Rowlett or something like that.
Can't remember.
We did a re-recording of Think of the USA for the US market, which he produced.
Did we? Huh?
Yeah.
Wonder where that went.
You'll find that on compilation albums. You know, when you got like 40 best punk songs ever.
We did another version of it.
We did, for Mountain Records. You remember the guy came in? So the guy came in and he had this little pot, like a wooden, beautifully engraved Balinese wooden thing made of teak. And he opened it up and there's a mirror there and about half a kilo of coke inside. You go, what the hell's this?
When we started recording the album, that was at, the fact that we've recorded the Outside View first, right, at Decibel Studios in Stamford Hill. Do you remember that 8-track?
Yes, I do, yeah.
We recorded that really quickly, didn't we?
That was in a day. We'd done that in a day.
It's an evening. I thought an evening even. It was, I'm pretty sure it was after school. But what did you think? With your attitude with Dave Goodman, you seemed to get on quite well with Dave. Did you think he was? Because my view on Dave is that he was not really a producer. He was just an engineer who happened to be in front of a band and recorded them. So when he says that he made the Sex Pistols, which is kind of his line, it's not really true. But I did find some of his production efforts quite, things like hand claps. I thought that's great to have hand claps on a record, and acoustic guitar on the chorus of Lock It Up and stuff like that. How did you feel about Dave's influence?
Well, we only had two producers. That was Dave and Martin. And what I found with Martin was he got much greater into the songs itself. So try playing these notes, try doing this guitar overdub, try making these sounds. What I fundamentally didn't like about Dave's production was, remember Stamford Hill, first time ever in a studio, you don't know what the hell was going on. After that, we went to Riverside Studios in Chiswick.
Mm-hmm.
That was much,
USA.
We did 4 songs there. Mm-hmm. So we did USA.
No Brains.
No Brains. We did Michael's Monetary System.
Oh yeah.
And something else.
Space Dreaming, I think.
Space Dreaming.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of difficulties with that because Dee's drumming was speeding it. We had to do everyone went. Dave and I stayed behind. We did all the drums and some other little guitar bits as well. Because I'm not a guitar player, but I can do heavy sounding guitar sounds and stuff like that. Simply because of the guitar equipment using Steve Jones' broken neck guitar.
Yes, that's right.
She very kindly sold to us. What disappointed me most about Dave when we made the album was we left that studio one night having recorded Anne, saying that's going to be our next single. And when we went back the next morning to listen to the final mix, we didn't recognise the song.
Yeah, I don't know what he did with the songs to fuck them up, but there was something.
I think the guy had been working all day long like we had, and doing the mixes in the evening, he must have been absolutely knackered,
Yeah.
completely knackered. So he's probably got all sorts of nose candy going on to keep himself going, and it affects the way you start to hear things.
Yeah. I remember him always saying that we're going to put the overdubs on later, we'll put that overdub later, and we never got around to do any of those.
So, like, you know, as you know, guitar tracks missing,
Yeah.
vocals missing.
Yeah, and sometimes the guitar's so low, I wonder if it's even there.
Yeah.
You know, he speeded up some of the tracks, and I never understood that.
Well,
To this day, when you listen to stuff, I've got on a few of the tracks, I've got this kind of helium quality. It's speeded up.
yeah.
And he never explained adequately what the point of that was.
I think your point is right. You know, he was a sound engineer rather than a producer. I think a producer should come in and have an effect on how the music sounds. You know, even in terms of how the songs are laid out. You know, should you be going into a middle eight then? Should we have a chorus then? Helping the band, particularly us young guys, school kids, helping us create commercial songs.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of. I mean, he was good at encouraging us to do our thing, but there wasn't much kind of helpful.
No.
Approach it like this, or.
And guiding us.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we wrote USA in 24 hours, wasn't it? Written, recorded in 24 hours.
Well, we've recorded No Brains as the next single,
Yeah.
which I think, again, another big mistake that didn't get released as the second single, because that would have been.
You know why that was?
Well, they thought it was too offensive.
No, they went to a publisher called Connolly and Connolly and played them the track because they're trying to sell the publishing rights, our publishing
Campbell
rights.
and Connolly, I think.
Was it Campbell and Connolly? And the guy there said, this guy's just screaming at the end of the record. We can't have that. We won't.
That is a fucking great scream.
That is a great scream. Yeah, I bet you don't do that live anymore.
No way.
Yeah, that was tremendous.
Throat shredding.
And
scream.
you can imagine that being played on John Peel's show. People would have gone, wow, this is just tremendous.
It should have been. And the cover was going to be great on the alley road with the pig's head.
Yeah,
and all that.
we did all that stuff, didn't we?
And then they decided to pull the plug on it after that conversation, and we had to come up with a new single very quickly, didn't we?
That conversation was probably somebody in their 40s who
Yeah.
eventually never signed us. So it had a material effect on what they did. They should have been, this is what I say, if you've got a strategy, this is our strategy, we know what type of singles we're going to release. Once the band becomes popular, we'll get them doing this sort of thing. We would have to become more mainstream. You can't be out on the edge all the time if you want to create a commercial band.
I mean, that No Brains has become the kind of anthem in a way, and so it just would have made. I think that was another. There's quite a few.
Is that your final song in the set?
Yes, yeah.
Right. So I know once that starts, get my coat on, get out before the rush.
And I won't be doing the screaming at the end anyway. So, well, that is quite a scream. I listened back to that recently, and it's in tune as well. It's just fucking.
Well, I thought that re-edited version you did was fantastic.
Yeah, I think
Really, it just all the sounds were right. There was nothing in there that didn't fit into the song. The sound, really, the sound. Not so much the song, but the sound. It really a lot of presence.
And yeah, it works. Those tracks on Ant are, I think, far superior to the album. But you try telling that to an Ian fan, and they just won't have it because they just want. Like, I'm coming at it from a place where I think this is what sounds great, and this is what you're getting. They come from it as this was the original. They don't even care if it was recorded on a fucking cassette.
Yeah.
That's superior.
No, I have a lot of empathy with that, because if I go and see a band, I don't want to hear, here's our greatest ever hit from 1985, but we've updated it to 2025 and it sounds completely different. No, I want to hear, I want to hear that hit as it was.
Well, no, I want it to sound good from the beginning. It's the way I approach it.
That's because you've got to play it so many times.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
The audience have come to hear Eater 1976, haven't they?
No, but I'm not even talking about live. Live, they don't seem to give a shit about. I mean, all the bands that play it punk festivals and stuff, they sound like the heavy metal bands now, you know.
Right, because the equipment's better.
Yeah, the equipment's better, so it does sound different, but the audience doesn't mind that. What I mean is, if they own the original album, and I call it an unfinished, you know, bunch of tracks, they would still prefer that than the eventually remastered and finished copy of that same album. Not because it's not better, but because they want the original. Yeah. But I've never understood record collectors.
That Blackpool gig was very good, wasn't it? You got great reviews for that. Last year's.
No, the recent one, the 2023. Yeah, that was a great gig actually. That was probably one of my favourite gigs that I've ever done. It was, the sound was great, and
I think it's fantastic, you know, that you're still packing them in after all these years. Thank God nobody remembers who Paul Morley was.
Yeah.
And these other guys. You know, I was thinking Julie Birchall.
He hated us, didn't he, Paul Morley?
Yeah, but he has good reason to hate us. Here's a guy, right? He's coming to London. He's probably in his late 20s, so he's insecure about coming to London. He's starting off in a relatively new profession, and how can he be cool if he likes a bunch of kids?
Yeah,
you know, he's got to make his credibility. It's much easier. It was much easier in those days. Slag us off and be fawning all over the Clash because, well, you know, I want to be like Nick Kent, don't I?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I suppose we were a little bit too young to be taken seriously.
We were too young to be cool for guys who are 10 years older than us.
Yeah.
But for kids who are our age, listening to what you're singing about, it's hugely relevant and still relevant today.
But I mean, when I see a young band, like a really young band, playing, I always give them a bit of respect because they've got up there and they're doing it despite all the setbacks of being so young. But we never seem to get that. We just seem to get slagging us off as though we were their peers on a kind of intellectual level, which we obviously weren't. Do you know what I mean? I don't remember us getting much leeway as are there only kids. Look at
that. No, because you know we're pioneers. You know, we might be kids, but we were pioneers. You know, you probably got 6 bands at that time.
At the beginning, it was just a handful.
Damned, Clash, Pistols, Stranglers, Vibrators, us.
Subway Sect. Yeah.
Subway Sect, barely known.
I never.
Johnny Moped.
Yeah, that was not real. That was a joke.
Johnny Moped. I love Johnny Moped. The guy with half a moustache. And he used to wear
that helmet.
No, it was a steel sieve, like you'd sieve flour with on his. It's just tremendous.
But it was a joke at the time, wasn't it? Like, this is Captain Sensible's mate. Yeah. Not a band, but they're kind of.
And he used to say basically all the time. Basically, this is basically our next number.
And he always had these big blisters on his lips.
What a guy! They're still going strong though.
Yeah,
I saw a documentary about him. I mean, that documentary has only been made because Chrissy Hynde was in the band for 5 minutes.
I didn't even know she was.
But it's a really fascinating documentary and very, very interesting to see, you know, the guy's still going today.
What did you make of the Moors Murderers? Do you remember that?
I do remember.
The Moors Murderers was Steve Strange, Chrissy Hynde, and a couple of other people.
Well, I remember them being in the label. We were rehearsing that day, and they were sitting up in the reception area.
Because we had that big building in Fulham,
Dawes Road,
and had the rehearsal studio
in the basement,
and the office
on the first floor, and then people living above. So we walk in, and I really didn't like Steve Strange. I'd seen him around. I thought he was a bit odd. He was just an unpleasant bloke, in my opinion. My sort of interactions with him weren't great ones, and they were all sort of very sort of cliquey. And I thought this was driven by Dave, not a really great piece of music to do. Hugely offensive to people. I mean, you know, in those days, you know, it was certainly more offensive than going on to the Bill Grundy's show and telling people to fuck off.
Yeah, well, the Moors Murderers that was not that long after. It was only about 10 years, 11 years after those kids were all buried on the moors by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley.
Yeah.
And so, but I think at that time, everything was chosen to outrage people and shock people, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there are sort of degrees, aren't there, of that was just really, chopping up a pig's head at the Roxy is one thing. Screaming about Free Myra Hindley is completely different. I think, these are kids whose parents don't know where they are, and I just thought it was bad time. Well, not even bad time. Should never have done it.
It didn't go very far though, did it? But they've become a kind of legend has been built up around the Moors mergers, which is the way it seems to go. I think even bands that only had one rehearsal can be invited to play Rebellion now if they're still playing or willing to get up there and do it. And it's become too much for kind of collectors, weird, train spotty kind of.
I've never been there.
You don't want to.
No?
I'll tell you, we played a gig, the Rebellion gig we did in the Opera House days. That was a great gig, but the audience, they don't feel like a proper rock audience. They feel more like people who are spectators at a kind of sport, and they're into it, but they're not actually going for it.
Yeah.
Whereas we played with Bad Nerves at Dingwalls last January, and it was packed, and it was a proper audience.
Well,
the difference is massive. If you could pick one band out of all of the punk bands that you would say were the best, mine would be the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. There was nothing like them. Steve Jones' guitar sound. I mean, whatever we say about whoever played the guitar on the records, we don't know. But that Les Paul Custom with the Fender Reverb amp, that sound was absolutely bang on.
Are you talking about the Nevermind the Bollocks album?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's not just Steve on that?
I've heard there's all sorts of people on it. There's Chris Spedding was on that.
I know he was on some early demos,
Right.
But I don't think he was around for that.
I haven't heard Steve Jones deny that. I've seen him interviewed. He doesn't deny it. And I think Steve Jones he's become a very accomplished guitar player, just as Dave Vanian. Dave Vanian's voice today is so much better than it was.
Yeah.
He's really a good singer.
A voice is supposed to mature after 40, yeah.
Okay.
And so, but there's a surprising amount of singers that weren't all that great then that are fucking terrible now. Billy Idol, for instance, did you hear him on his recent gigs? The guy, he can't sing. But anyway, I think we're going to have to call it a day. So, Ian, thank you very much for coming in.
Great to see you again, mate.
And nice one.